Bob Barr, President Obama proposes a 2-year pay freeze for federal civilian employees. They're not happy. What do you think?
I think it's about time now. One would think by the outrage and opposition that we're hearing from the federal workforce and the employee unions that the president was proposing to slash federal pay by 80%. Really, all he's doing is a very, very modest, but I think symbolically very important freeze on the regular increases in federal pay for a brief period of time. And when you look at what the way that people in the private sector, many are suffering from the downturn in the economy and the huge increases in federal salaries in recent years, this is a very small step, but an important one. So I commend the president.
We have a report this summer by the Bureau of Economic Analysis. It shows that federal employees make about twice as much as their private sector counterparts. We've got a graphic made. $123,000 in salary and benefits for federal employees compared to $61,000 for private sector workers. Is that part of what's fueling the call for this?
It certainly is. And there also, of course, was the commission headed by Mr. Bowles, Erskine Bowles, and former Republican Senator Alan Simpson recently that came out with a number of recommendations, including some cuts in federal pay. So this is long overdue. I think one of the other figures that we saw recently was the fact that there, over the last 5 years, with regard to the number of federal employees making $150,000 or more, has increased, and I verified this, 17-fold, has gone up 17 times just in the last 5 years. I mean, they're just living in a world of their own up in Washington, D.C., and it's about time that they got real.
Now, is there some political strategy in the timing of the president's call for the pay freeze? I mean, he met today with congressional leaders at the White House. They've agreed to talk about compromising on extending the Bush tax cuts. You know, could it be that the president is trying to make it more difficult for Republicans to defend extending those tax cuts for the rich by saying, look, we're asking federal employees to sacrifice?
I'm shocked and amazed that you would think that politics might enter into this. After all, this is Washington, D.C., where everything is done on the merits and according to the facts. But in reality, certainly the president is aware of what's going on and aware of the problems with regard to extending the Bush tax cut. So, sure, I think that's part of this. But notwithstanding the politics here, it's good economics and it's good public policy what the president is proposing.
What do you think is going to happen with regard to the tax cuts? I mean, some Democrats are talking about moving the line from $250,000 to $1 million to make it even more difficult for the Republicans to defend extending those cuts to people making more than $1 million.
I suspect that something will be worked out. It is a fiscal mess in Washington, D.C. right now. The Congress, for the first time that I can ever recall, has failed to pass a single spending bill, appropriations bill, this entire year. So they've got this huge continuing resolution, they call it, to continue paying the federal departments and agencies, and on top of that, you have the controversy over the tax cuts. I mean, personally, I like tax cut. I've never met a tax cut I didn't like. But the fact of the matter is that I think both sides are going to have to compromise on this. So I think at the end of the day, as part of an effort to at least get a temporary spending measure to carry us through into the new Congress in January, I think that they'll work out a compromise, whether it's a temporary extension of the Bush tax cuts or the so-called millionaires tax to increase it, but only or to extend it, but only up to $1 million of income. Something along those lines, I wouldn't be surprised.
Now, Bob, you mentioned the Deficit Reduction Commission. It unveils its revised proposals tomorrow. How do you assess the chances of this lame duck Congress acting on the proposals to curb Social Security and Medicare costs, increase the gas tax? I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there that is politically unpopular.
It's politically unpopular and it's very complex. I don't see that this lame duck Congress will be in a position to take up much of the Commission's proposals. They are certainly food for discussion and policy debates and so forth, but the heavy lifting represented by the Commission's recommendations will have to wait until next year.
Yeah, I mean, the Commission chairs say they've started an adult conversation, but when did the adult decisions come?
Well, down the road, I'm afraid.
All right. Bob Barr, we appreciate your time always. Thank you.
Thank you.